podcast dedicated to taking you behind the scenes of the designs of your favorite TV shows and films. Each episode, I'll be sharing design stories from some of Hollywood's most famous sets. Interviews from set decorators, production designers, directors, and actors about creating the look of TV and film, about their design inspirations, and stories that take sets from page to screen. Hello, and welcome to Decorating Pages. I'm your host, Kim Wanup. Thank you so much for the great response on last week's episode about my ADG nominated episode of The Good Place with Ian Phillips, Adam Morale, and Graham Radcliffe. Seems like everyone really enjoyed it. And special thanks to Mark Evan Jackson, who is on The Good Place. He plays the demon Sean. And he also hosts the Good Place podcast, which is awesome. Thank you so much for giving us a little shout out. I really, really appreciate the support. If you are a fan of the Good Place podcast is really unique. It's really in-depth and funny and great conversations that take place with the actors, writers, producers, and crew of the show. And you really get a sense of how great it is to work on The Good Place and how nice our crew is, really. And it's always great to hear from Mike Schur when he is on. He's so smart and funny and really gives you more to think about in the episodes. So thank you again. I wanted to do a little sidebar here and call out my alumni college, Jefferson University, which when I went there was called Philadelphia College of Textiles and Sciences, and the year I graduated, it changed its name to Philadelphia University, PU, as I like to call it, and then just recently to Jefferson University because it merged with the Medical University. Jefferson has been named one of the top 15 interior design schools in the country by Architectural Digest. I always say that my education of like history and art and architecture or fabric structure and drafting and CAD, all of those help me in this job almost every day. I definitely know that my education is needed for my background and passion. Although a lot of people aren't educated in it and it's just the passion, you still have done research, you still have educated yourself. I believe that. I would never have been hired for one of my first jobs on Wheel of Fortune if I didn't know CAD then. Not sure if I could do it now. I had learned SketchUp years ago. I'm sure I could figure that out now. It was like a dumbed down sort of CAD version. It's probably been like 20 versions of CAD since I last touched it. But I know I could pick up a pencil and draw. And that is one of the skills I learned there. And I loved drafting. That was like one of my favorite classes. And I was lucky to learn hand drafting and computer drawing at the time. And waiting hours in the CAD lab for, your final drawing to render, or taping dimes to the back of your triangle retractor thingy so it didn't smudge your drawings. I mean, these are problems you have in college. So congratulations to Jefferson University for the ranking. And yeah. On this episode, my interview is with production designer John Schaffner, whose work you know. Because have you ever seen Friends? Have you ever seen 2.5 Men, The Big Bang Theory, or you watch Mom? Are you going to watch the SAG Awards this weekend? I mean, he's done it all. He has such a plethora of long-running hit multi-camera shows on his resume. I don't think the guy has taken a break in like 25 years. He chose the fabric of the Golden Girls sofa. I mean, that in my book, that's huge. I mean, how could you do it? It's so... Hello, is this on Golden Girls? He painted Monica's apartment purple. I don't know. I'm just going to tease about the story that he has with the elevator in The Big Bang Theory because that's a good one. Just wait for it. John has 31 Emmy nominations and 4 wins. He has 20 ADG noms, 3 wins, a Cable Ace Award nomination, 8 Daytime Emmy nominations, 2 wins. In 2001, he was nominated 3 times that year and was up against himself in the multicam category. He has a total of 64 nominations and 9 wins. He has been the chairman of the Academy of Television Arts and Sciences Board of Governors, and he is currently nominated for an ADG Award for his work on the last season of The Big Bang Theory. Very nice man to share his time with me, so I hope you enjoy. Do you still get nervous after, 64 nominations?
Yes, very much so.
Yeah.
That's all in all kinds of things. I haven't gotten 64 at the Art Directors Guild.
No, but all together with your Emmys and your daytime Emmys, and I mean, oh my gosh, you've been up against yourself how many times?
Oh, so many times I can't even remember.
Does that well, I was gonna say, is it hard? Would you be mad if one won and one lost? I guess not, but you're in such a fascinating position with multicam that you get to work on multiple shows at the same time. Now, are you able to do that because you have a design partnership and collaboration, or do you think you'd be able to, handle? I mean, sometimes you're on 2 to 3 shows. It looks like, or even.
Yeah, let me back up. So, as a production designer, inadvertently rather, I ended up, and my partner Joe Stewart ended up in the field of multi-camera entertainment design. So that's talk shows, game shows, award shows, kids shows, variety, music, entertainment, and sitcoms. And it has always been the tradition in the business for multi-camera designers to multitask and multi-job.
Definitely.
And especially, and very much so, even in the comedy sitcom business. Don Roberts was the primary designer for Norman Lear on most of Norman's shows, although there was another designer who was involved, Chuck Morosky, for a while. But Norman I can't even remember how many shows he had on the air at one time.
Well, I think it was like 6 or something at one time, yeah.
And when I first moved to California, I went to work for Ed Stevenson, who was a production designer of renown, who had transitioned from music entertainment and had done some single camera work, features. He was doing 4, 5, 6 sitcoms at a time, especially with Whit Thomas Harris. And there have been many designers and comedy designers who do multiple shows. And to this day, Bernie Visca does multiple shows. Glenda Rapello does multiple shows. There's quite a there's a small group of us, I will say. So yes, it's not unusual. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that in multi-camera comedy, it's like summer stock, and you design the play a week in advance, and all of the sets are installed and decorated. And at that point, you're no longer really tied down with day-to-day management of that particular episode.
Right.
So you have a lot of ability to juggle your time and prioritize. So when you're doing multiple shows, you know when you're going to have space to dedicate to the other show, because the show that you've got one show designed and it's moving in through construction and paint, and it gets set up, and so that allows you to do the multiple shows. And in addition, of course, most production designers who've done multiple shows end up with a team of people that we've worked with for a long time. Garvin Eddy, who for years did all of Carsey Warner productions, he had his, set designers and assistant art director teams. And I've worked with 2 people here at Warner Brothers who have worked with me. We added it up. Darren Janes and Francoise Cherry Cohen have been with me now, I think, 23 years.
Oh, wow.
So, which is completely unique.
Yeah.
In single camera work, people become teams, and you might do a series, and when you complete that series, you hope the production designer gets another series, and that you all continue working together.
Yeah.
But because multi-camera multitasks and overlaps, it's much easier to keep the same people working for you year after year.
Oh,
Which is
oopsie.
neat.
Sorry, my bad. Sorry.
Long answer to your short question.
No. That's the exact answer I'm looking for, because I really do sort of run this as if I know nothing, because I feel like we all have so many different titles and different niches that we do, that I feel like for the audience it's easier explained, because we know the lingo and most people don't in our outside of our world.
When I first came to town and went to work for Edward Stevenson, he sort of realized, well, I think you seem multi-talented. I'm going to make you my decorator. So my first job for him was to babysit Benson and then to replace everything that the original decorators had rented. And then after that first season, they said, well, this is going to run for a while. Let's buy everything.
Right.
And asked me, do you think you can do that? And I said, sure. So I did. And then the following year, he said, well, I'm going to have you decorate Benson and Soap. And the other decorator who was working for Ed, and we were working under the title Assistant Art Director under the work contract. And Dwight Jackson left, and Ed said to me, John, do you think you could do all 4 shows? So I decorated Benson, Soap, It's a Living, and a show called I'm a Big Girl Now, starring Danny Thomas.
I loved It's a Living. I was like obsessed and wanted to be a waitress in LA so bad from watching that show. Wanted to get the black and white little waitress outfit that they wore.
Right.
I was like obsessed with that show. I loved it. Great job.
Great cast. And Dwight decorated the pilot, and then I took that show over. But again, that was something that today in the workplace, it's very rare for a decorator to do multiple shows.
Yeah.
The contract under the basic agreement disallows decorators to do at more than one show under 2 different payrolls. They can do 2 shows when it's under the same payroll, which is why Ann Shea can decorate both Mom and the Bob Hart Abishola series.
Right. And she was doing Big Bang, or you both were doing Big Bang and
for that, yeah.
And then, do you also think that it's become harder to do multiple multicam because of the amount of swing sets you have? I feel like new shows, we have more sets. It's constantly more sets.
There's constantly more. I mean, when it used to be like you'd average 1 or 2 swing sets a week on a comedy show, and now it's often, 3, 4, 5, 6. One advantage that I have, and that multi-camera designers have across the board, is that under the studio systems, they've built up some stock sets over the years. Paramount has their collection, Fox has a collection, Sony has a collection, Warner Brothers has a collection, Universal has a collection. So when you get the script and you break it down, you quickly say, well, I know I can use this restaurant that we used last year on this other show, and it's still in stock. Maybe somebody else has used it and repainted it, but I'll bring it in, repaint it, and change the wallpaper on it and call it something else. So sometimes you have the ability to pull in walls or stock scenery that you rearrange. So you're not designing from scratch every single set usually.
Right. You're making it your own, even though it's been built. You still have to manipulate it for your specific set.
Correct. So that does help facilitate. I mean, we have very little time. I mean, I have a show this week where we received the script the day before yesterday in the late afternoon, and it needs to be ready to start rehearsal on Monday. So we're pulling a lot of things out of our
Your
hat.
sets have to be done when they rehearse, almost complete, I would say. Yeah. Yeah, that's so much. And then you tape like on a Tuesday or Thursday night, whatever schedule.
Or Friday. It's a 5-day work process with a production meeting, table read day, 2 rehearsal days, a day of pre-blocking and some pre-shooting, and then the audience show day.
You've had multicam shows that have had very long runs. I mean,
I'm very fortunate,
Two
yes.
and a Half Men and Big Bang and I mean
Friends.
Friends. Yeah. Do you go into it thinking, oh, I'm gonna design it like this because I know, you know, I know that they're gonna want this eventually, or this is gonna be a good show. Like I'm gonna really
You
do.
always, as a production designer, enter into the with your experience, and of course, experience you gain more experience. I'm fortunate that I had that early experience working for Ed for 3 years, long time ago,
Mm-hmm.
and I never let go of anything that I had learned. But I do know also from my theater, my classical training in the theater,
Mm-hmm.
because I had gone to Carnegie Mellon and have a master's in stage design there. You understand a lot about putting a play together, and you're going to do lots of plays. So in the end, when you design a basic set for a sitcom comedy, you're constantly going, okay, now in the future they're probably going to need a bathroom, another hallway, etc. On Friends, it became evident to us that there were 6 characters who were going to be playing in the room at the same time. We wanted to give them a lot of entrances, so both bedrooms opened right onto the set. The door to the bathroom opened right onto the main set. There was a hallway with a mystery door that later became Monica's secret closet. Um, we came up with the idea that they crawled out the window and had their little balcony, or as we used to call them in New York, tar beaches, where there are sections of the roof line that might stick out, so you can go outside. So it's not an authentic terrace, but it would be something that you could utilize. More often than not, you climbed the last set of stairs and went up on the roof. But in this case, we made it outside the window, on their, because they were kind of on the top floor of their building anyway.
Right.
So we're always thinking about that, and how we can take advantage of things like on the Big Bang Theory. I presented the design with an elevator in the hallway separating the 2 apartments, and the producer and the team were like, "Why did you put an elevator in there? The whole point is we want them to walk up and down the stairs for those transitional times. That's what it was. Something was really behind this in the series."
Mm-hmm.
Realized a lot, and I said, "Well, I think the elevator is broken, and the landlord is never going to fix it." And everybody agreed that, yeah, and in the end that gave him opportunity for a story to go there. So
Yeah,
you're always looking for,
what a last episode sort of bonus for everyone, I think.
yeah, when the elevator finally worked.
Yeah. Well, that's an amazing story that came out of the design and that wasn't like a written thing. And how
Yeah.
often are the designs or the decor in the room, we have a hand in, like, oh, they made a joke out of that, or and that became like a plot point. I know with Big Bang, the decor in the room and everything of how much people love that show, and wanted all of those little scientific measurement things and the brainiac sort of little details. I think it
Well,
became it's its own little iconic world that people try to mimic.
well, that's our job, is to read the script, get as much information as we can out of that. That's where we start. Have conversations about the characters in the story with the creators of the show, and then as we see the roles being cast, that sheds more light onto who these people are. And our goal as a production designer, and certainly you and everyone who works in this business, is decorating, whatever, your goal is to flesh out those characters. And I think one of the amazing pieces of work, it was done by Mary, the costume designer on The Big Bang Theory. She truly helped those actors define themselves, because she really truly came up with all of these ideas of how each character would be identified through their clothing, and of course it was a collaborative process, but she really did an amazing job, and I think has never really received the acclaim she should have for that amazing work.
Oh, definitely. And they became top sellers. I mean, people just walk around with the shirts that
Yeah.
the characters have. I mean, and how many times does it look? How many? I mean, I had a Rachel haircut. I mean, it's these shows influence you so much when you're watching them every week, and you're I think the camaraderie of laughing too makes you feel comfortable with these characters, and oh, I could be like that, or like I could pull off that haircut, and I could have that sofa, and I could paint my apartment purple.
Yeah, well, we want our audience on shows like this to really, as you describe it, feel comfortable. That we make the environment inviting, a place you want to spend time in. I mean, the Purple Apartment was really kind of came about. Executive producer Kevin Bright said to me, "I don't want another landlord white apartment. Where there's too much of that on TV. Let's think about what would be what would be color? How can we bring color into the set?" And it just popped into my head. I said, "Well, I think we should paint it purple." And they looked at me like I was out of my mind. And he said, "What do you mean?" And I said, "Well, let's just say they got a big bucket of purple paint and painted the whole everything, the molding, the trims, the doors, everything." And so he said, "Well, show me what that would look like." So, I had a little white paper model that we, watercolored up. And I said, "Look, the kitchen is going to have some other colors in it, and the little hallway upstage so it isn't going to be one bucket of purple." But, and we were guided a little bit in our heads about the fact that, purple is a really great color for, many skin tones.
Right.
And I knew that we had three beautiful women who were going to be on this show, and every one of them would look great on it all the time. It did force some choices, first in decorating, where, as we described to Greg Grande, who decorated the show, what kind of New York environment this was. That it's a mix and match eclectic world, because you get things off the street, or when you don't have money, you find stuff. And but it did force Greg to make choices where there were a lot of neutrals: the neutral carpet, the neutral sofa, the kind of neutral wood. There was some of the amber tones into it, that he brought into the curtains. And then, of course, the picture frame over the door was a story that I had said to Greg, "What are we going to do about the back of this slab door? This is what you have in a New York apartment. There's no molding. There's nothing on it except a peephole. And we need you to get one of those little, doorbells, which you push from the outside, and you see it." And then I said, in New York, lots of times we used to, put pegs and hang umbrellas and bags there. So if you live in a walk-up apartment, when you leave, you kind of make sure you've got everything. And the next day he came up and showed me this picture frame, and he said, "What do you think of this?" and held it over the peephole. And I said, "Glue it on. I love it." And that's where positive, that's a great, the collaboration is very important between the set decorator and the production designer.
Oh, definitely. Now, because in multicam, the center of the scene always seems to be the sofa. It's an iconic, the Central Perk sofa, or even the Big Bang sofa. Like, how much collaboration do you think back and forth you have with the decorator on that?
Well, usually when we're decorating a show, I start out after, because I usually have the first meetings, and I usually do the first research. I'm starting to set up what it's going to look like. And first of all, there's the geography of the sofa on a comedy. On Friends, we actually got it to run perpendicular to the camera aisle, which was unique. But then that allowed us to put the sofa in the coffee house exactly, where you're used to seeing it. And so you always struggle with that. But then when it comes down to the sofa itself, I think our first conversation is usually about scale and style and then color. And whether to make a bold choice, like we did with the melon colored sofa in the coffee house that Greg grew up and brought in, or I'd like to look back and think of the fabric that I selected for the pilot to the Golden Girls that
Oh,
sofa,
my
because
God.
that was the last thing I had decorated professionally.
Which is another iconic sofa. I mean, that's where you want to be on that sofa having a conversation with Sophia. Is
Yeah,
what
but then you gotta bring enough throws and throw pillows that when wardrobe is like, I'm losing my mind, I want to put her in this, peach top. I don't want her to blend in, so that's when you bring in the blue, throw and stick it over the back of the sofa. So was a lot of that on that show. But anyway, yeah. So there's all the kinds of things that you do in a collaborative process. But usually, as a production designer, you're the one who kind of gets to start the conversation. You've got the research. You've had some of the meetings, and normally now I usually create boards with pictures that are so much more easier to find on the internet than used to be cutting magazines apart. We put a board together early on because so often now they won't pay for a decorator to start to help me do that. So I end up making the boards and choosing all kinds of things for my presentations. And then
I definitely feel like my prep time has gotten less and less all the time.
Yeah, it's a cheat. I don't know why. When the shows are getting bigger and they're making the amount of time you have to go out and find everything shorter, it's
really
you gotta ask for more help all the time. Then you have to outsource more. That's for sure.
Definitely. Did you know that the Big Bang Theory and what was it? Big Bang Theory and Friends are Lego sets?
Yes, I do, and I still have to obtain a couple of those.
Oh, I was looking at them and I was thinking, man, if only production designers got residuals.
Oh, if only production designers got residuals. We are paid by the week, and we're hired to do the job, and once we're done, we're gone. And but on the other hand, the legacy of the work remains.
Yeah. And look, I mean, your friend's set is part of the WB tour. I mean, they're getting, people are touring that, hundreds and hundreds of people are touring that every day.
Oh, yeah.
Work and to sit on that sofa and take a picture. I mean, it's, I think, I know that I read once that the production designer of Cheers got a residual, but it was like $250 a year or something, like something super low.
Yeah, the New York contract, and I'm not sure if it still does, did allow for residual for designers of television shows.
Oh, wow.
Because it was based on the theatrical concept that if you have a Broadway show and it's running, even though you were paid to design it, as long as it runs, you still get paid every week something.
Right.
And it was based on how many Broadway shows you've had. The more Broadway shows you have that ran, the more money you get under their contract.
Oh.
But
that means the more work you had to do.
Yeah, I've only gotten residuals on a couple of projects here. One was Showtime at the Apollo, which I designed, and the producer Bob Banner, one of the greats, they used that set for like 10 years, and every year I get a check for $3,000 or some amount, and with a note saying, we're still using your set and we're still grateful for what you did that made it so flexible that we still love it.
Oh,
he was a true gentleman of the old school.
And isn't that the thing? You just want to be thanked. You just want to be like thought about and appreciated a lot of the time. Now, when did you come to Los Angeles? You said Carnegie Mellon, and then you were in New York, and then so when did you come here?
Well, we'd been working in the theater, and we decided, well, one day, before we're too old to ever leave New York, because there reaches that point if you live in Manhattan that you'll never leave. And we'd been there 3 years, and we said, well, why don't we, before we get locked, let's check out the West Coast. So we had been doing some, work that had been made for public television as assistants. And so we bought a 1965 Thunderbird convertible, the same exact car and color that they used on Thelma and Louise. Not the same car, but the same model design, that Thunderbird 65. And convertible, and we drove it to Hollywood and started calling around. Got jobs.
Just Just got in town and got jobs.
Yeah, I had in New York through a classmate of mine. I had been hired to do a Perry Como Christmas special in Colonial Williamsburg, and I was, had very little experience in media design, but it was Colonial Williamsburg, so I went down sort of as a glorified set decorator / production designer to work with the director and the curators in Colonial Williamsburg to describe the environment that they wanted for this song and what Perry was going to be doing. And then I would go in and they would take me into the warehouse, and I got the incredible good fortune to select, well, let's use these dishes. They'll show up nicely on camera and give color to it. And then talk about where we should hang the wreaths and how much we should do to each room, because I would say, well, our goal is to have a little bit of Christmas in every shot. And, that's why a lot of times in real life, when you see a set decorated for the holidays, it seems so overly dressed.
So, yeah, but you have to, because you never know what the camera's going to see and focus on.
Right. You want to see a little bit of Christmas in every shot.
Yeah.
And through that connection with Bob Banner and his company, when I moved to California, I connected with them immediately. And they were kind enough to bring me aboard on a couple of projects as the designer. I immediately did a 25th anniversary of the Riviera Hotel TV special in Las Vegas, starring Liberace and Tony Orlando and Don and Don Rick, all the people that ever worked the Riv, as we used to call it.
Oh, when I was little, my parents, we used to go there. We would stay there. I know the Riviera well.
Riv.
The Riv.
The Riv.
They're the best Italian restaurant.
Yes, that was the famous one.
They would make the fettuccine right at the table. It was awesome. And the Caesar salad. Oh my God, it was so good.
Back in the day when there weren't 9 million fine restaurants.
No, that was it.
Yeah. So that was, honestly, that was, we made our move we really set up here in January of 1980.
Wow. And then I saw on your credits, you have so many with David Copperfield. Do you know the guy?
Oh God, yes.
Yeah?
And that was a curious phone call. A friend of ours was the lighting designer for him. Bob Dickinson, a renowned designer of like the lighting for the Oscars, the Tonys, the Grammys, etc. And I'd met him on the Perry Como show when he had been a gaffer. And so he had moved on and become his own designer, especially he did solid gold. Anyway, he was working with David, and David had shot the Alcatraz segment and Escape, and then he needed designs for the rest of the show that would be shot on a stage, in this case, the Pasadena Playhouse, and then he would take those sets on tour. So I can't even remember if we did 10 or 11 of his television specials. And we would always huddle in with David, and, he would talk us through the illusion and what was going to be there. And he would try to make us guess how it was going to be done. And sometimes he would never really, really, really tell us, although we pretty much figured them all out. And it would be a need to know deal, He was pretty cagey about that. But we had a great working collaboration with David, and we still stay in touch and send regards back now and then. But his career he has stopped touring, and he's locked himself into his setup in Vegas at the MGM resort, and he doesn't tour hardly. I don't think he tours at all anymore, But we go and see the show, and he says,
"What a treasure!"
We make suggestions and have a good chat.
Would you want to do that? Would you want to design like Vegas stage shows?
Well, we've kind of done some of that. We did the Radio City Music Hall Christmas Spectacular outside New York. So we did the Detroit, Chicago, Myrtle Beach, Branson, Los Angeles productions. And then we'd add a new one every year while they kept playing. And, it would change a little bit, being, the city it was in and stuff. And then they were going to go to Mexico City. And we had done Miss Universe in Mexico City. So we sort of stepped back from that. But we did do then the Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus a couple of times. And the last big kind of touring thing was Marvel Live, which was a sort of a stadium show with the Marvel characters in it. So we've kept one hand a little bit over the years in that. Joe did Toy Story 3 on ice.
Fun.
Arthur, the tour, so we've done enough of that. But theatricals do tend to lock you into a really lengthy period of technical rehearsals and leading to the opening night. Whereas you do one-offs with like the SAG Awards, you
and
start
then you're done
on Monday, and 9 days later, it's showtime and you're done.
So that's all the prep you get is 8. You have more than that. Design.
Well, you have your design, and the sets are pre-constructed, and scenic design, construction places. But the time that you're in the theater is much shortened.
Right.
Whereas in a theatrical enterprise, your time in the theater, your tech rehearsals, tends to last at least 2 weeks, if not longer.
Do you prefer doing the live events or the TV?
I think doing it all keeps you, engaged and gives you variety,
Yeah, definitely.
So that's good.
I took a look at Mom and The Ranch because I hadn't seen them, so I watched a couple of episodes of those last night, and 2 things sort of stuck out to me. Mom stuck out is that the sets seem like they are just straight on.
And it's a pretty classic multi-camera show with a camera aisle and a live audience, and as much as the show as we can is shot in front of the live audience.
Yeah. But I always feel like multicams have a lot of angled walls for those camera shots and everything, and then I was looking at Mom thinking like, oh, this is like straight on, like that kitchen wall, like the wall between the kitchen and the living room is that little cutoff. It's like straight on, like everything sort of, as you say, like the camera aisle is right there, and it seems
you make those choices sometimes. Whether to box rooms, and play 90-degree angles, is can be done. You don't have. I mean, it's very common, especially in the soap opera world, to do angled open sets. And it was much more common, I would say, in the early days of multi-camera and live TV because of the equipment and stuff. Now we don't arbitrarily wing walls out just on purpose unless we can do it by angling some of the upstage walls. There've been a lot of design. We've tried every which way to try to make the 3 walls we have in a box set, look like more walls. I mean, I always say that what we do, we have 3 walls in theory to put everything on it that a single camera designer has for 4 walls. So that's windows, your fireplace, your stairs, your doors, your hallways, all those things that you want to have in a room got to be on the spaces that you have. You don't have that 4th wall. Now, lots of times we build a 4th wall to cover for a certain camera angle, but we rarely use them.
Yeah.
So you're always inventing ways to give rooms interest and, give certain kinds of angles to them that allows you to, look like it's honestly meant to be shaped that way,
Yeah. Go ahead.
One reason also, though, that sometimes we do wing a wall out in the little tiny kitchen on Mom. The camera left wall is very much at an angle. So the upstage wall is very narrow. And as the room comes towards you, it gets wider. And that helps accommodate for 4 cameras when we need them there. But because it sort of has a little forced perspective quality to it, and because sometimes you only see the width of the back wall being this wide, you don't quite always perceive how much bigger the room has gotten towards the front.
Right.
It's a slight trick. It doesn't work all the time, but
it deceives the viewer, but you get that space to for the actors.
Correct.
The thing in the ranch that I thought was beautifully done was the staircase that comes right sort of down into the main living room. And I thought, well, that's a really good choice because you have that sort of small walk and talk that they're always going to catch, and the actor's not going to be sideways. They're going to be, it's
Yeah.
gonna be dead on. I thought that
Angling stairs into living rooms is something you spend a lot of time in. You know, if you can get them on a slight angle, you have a better chance. Lots of times they run just up and down stage. Every time someone goes up the stairs, it's butt to camera.
Right.
And if it's on a side wall, you know, sometimes that is awkward too. So oftentimes I've tried to angle stairs, but you know, you have to kind of look at who are these people, where do they live, and at some point you decide what kind of house it is, and you try to give some level of honesty and appreciation to, is it a craftsman house, is it a ranch house, is it an old house that they've added on to, is it a brand new house? You know, that helps guide you.
The ranch sets, I think, are so deeply layered and so aged and beautifully done. I think they're really phenomenal, and I think it's a really nicely lit show also.
Don Morgan, who was the lighting director, designer, DP on that, is I've worked with him off and on for years and years, and right now he's doing the Connors, this Roseanne spinoff. And but with that show, we really struggled with the fact that in order to make the show, we really struggled to try to make a multi-camera show be as real as possible in many ways.
Right.
Part of the challenge was that we had to set a level of reality because of the exterior, you know, the porch and the yard, the side,
all the mud, the mud.
You know, doing that on stage, I always say the hardest thing to do is outside, inside. You know? And trying to get that space and getting enough space so that we could do trees and do things that looked as real as we could, you know, get it to look. And, you know, going into the interior of this set, I mean, it really wasn't, The Ranch is not a classic comedy. There's humor in it, but in many ways it was a dramedy. A good word. You could also call it sometimes a version of a soap opera. It also had elements of, you know, melodrama as well. So it really wanted to, in order for the audience to go there, you had to give it that extra level of seriousness into some way. I mean, I think if you take a real comedy where there is humor, I mean, I think Mom is interesting because it has real wonderful high comedy and oftentimes very broad, layered against moments that are
serious problems.
But in order for you to accept the poignancy of some of those serious moments, that you have to kind of treat the whole thing a little bit lightlier. I'd like to think, you know.
Right.
Otherwise, the show would just, you would weep sometimes, and I have.
Yeah. Yeah. The performance, Alice and Jenny, is just amazing. And
the whole cast is. I pinched myself yesterday at the run through. I turned to, I remember who I was dining with. I think the prop man, or maybe I just went, you know, we are so lucky when we come in here and we see in our 22 minutes of run through here some of the most amazing acting. And I walked from that show over to Bob Hart Abishola, over to the Connors, and I see Laurie Metcalf and John Goodman and Sarah Gilbert. I'm like, whoa. And then I go over next door and I see Allison and Mimi and Anna and the team over there. It's like, whoa. I mean, I'm like seeing the best of the best.
Yeah, when you have great talent on screen, I mean, it becomes almost a little bit easier to design and decorate for, because you want it to be that good. You want to be a part. You really want it there for them.
Well, and they communicate to you a truth that that helps you find the truth in it too.
Mm-hmm,
You know,
definitely.
I have sat through many a run through of a pilot and going, oh my God, I've never seen so much acting.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's like, oh dear, what are we doing?
Yeah.
And then
They
I come and see something like this, and I'm like, whoa, these people are with
yeah.
such talent, such skill.
Oh, believe me, on rehearsals during Veep, I would pinch myself and be like, no one in the room can keep a straight face, and how are they going to get away with that? And oh, good, they just spun around in that chair and it made it better, or something.
Oh
You're
yeah,
just
the one
yeah,
that's another show that has a cast that's just, well, it
just
doesn't
no,
get any better than that,
yeah,
really, you know.
yeah. No, it's incredible, amazing talents that they have. I mean, we are just as talented. You're probably a lot more talented than I am, but it's just
No, I'm happy to have a job.
me too. Let me ask you this. You have had shows that have had long runs that have ended. Do you have any like special or favorite shows or show that you had and or a favorite set that you've done?
Well, I mean, I'm always going to start with Friends, just because it was our beginning, really, in many respects, and
Hmm.
the relationships that I had with the executive producers and the team that worked on that show was Friends. It was Friends all the way around, no matter, literally and figuratively. Um, and there's a soft spot in our heart for that always. But I like to say I pretty much love all my children equally. You know, of course, the Big Bang Theory uh, was was a marvelous project because it was always funny, and they often found humor in just the most marvelous ways that was not in any way at all ever crossed the line into offensiveness.
Mhm.
I mean,
Mhm.
I loved Two and a Half Men because that's where it went a lot of the time. Was,
The
excuse
opposite.
me, what did you just say?
Yeah.
And and then there are other shows that I loved, like the Drew Carey show with Drew. We did 9 years of that, and we did some of the most outlandish things with these big dance numbers, just
Wow.
tucked into the show. And
Hysterically just breaking out into song. So that was such a good show. I loved that show.
and I wish it was more available, because I think it was timely in many ways. I mean, I think one of our challenges too in design is to try to create a look on a show that doesn't get dated right away. You know,
Mm.
and I
Yeah.
and I think that if you turned in 11 years ago and watched the pilot of the Big Bang Theory, or at least the second pilot, the one that the show was based on, uh, all the way to the very end, you kind of lose track of what year it is, because it didn't change that much, but it felt like we weren't slave to contemporary. This is how your living room should look this year. You
Right.
know, I think we fail sometimes when we ape too much the current
The
trends
trend.
of
Yeah.
decor. If we try to do everything like Chip and Joanne, in
Mhm.
5 years it's going to look like this year.
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know and I think Friends, because of its eclectic nature of decor, in some ways you tune it in and you look at it and you don't immediately say, oh, this must be 1994.
Right.
It
You could
kind of,
that could be someone's apartment right now.
yeah.
It's
And
timeless.
rather than making it look like we just bought it all at no offense meant, but at IKEA, and
Yeah.
where everything's up to date in Kansas City,
Right.
then it gets out of date, much, much faster. So I think it's important sometimes in these shows to create something that you can hope has a semi-timeless look.
No, I think you're absolutely right. And then when you're working now on the Connors, how was that bringing, like, replicating that and keeping true to the
Oh,
original show?
well, and this is kind of a fun story, actually.
Okay.
So I was brought on board to recreate Roseanne.
Right.
And of course, Garvinetti, who had been the original designer, he had been Ed Stevenson's #1 assistant when I was decorating. So I'd known Garvin since 1980.
Mm-hmm.
His assistant, Jerry Dunn, has been working with me on other projects. So I had that. I also have wonderful designer associate, set designer, assistant art director in Daniel Sachs. Daniel Sachs's mother was B. Arthur. And
Yes.
Daniel brings so much to the party because he really has a most observing eye. And so I brought him on board, and Ann Aarons, the decorator. And Ann and I went to a meeting with Roseanne, Whitney Cummings, Bruce Helford, the executive producer, and Sarah Gilbert. And we sat there and they said, well, it's been 20 years since we went off the air. Obviously, things have worn out, things have changed. We feel that it's time to update their house. They still live in the same house, so we'd like to recreate the same architecture. Roseanne said, well, maybe he was a contractor. Maybe he got rid of those funny windows over the kitchen sink, and fixed those. And well, maybe they got some new carpet, and that sofa wore out, so they finally went and got a new sofa. And
What?
well, they needed to re-wallpaper the kitchen probably. And well, in 20 years they must have painted the living room. Come on. So Ann and I created boards that updated it, 10 years, shall we say, and a little more updated in the wallpaper and a little plainer carpet. And we brought in several sofas that had a comfortable feeling to them, but weren't the funny style of the big overgross wood and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I brought in some color tones for the house that I thought would be, kind of clean it up a little bit, and brought in some lamps and a few things. And we said, they've kept a lot, but like anything, something wears out or you break it, you get something new. So we presented all of this with still respect for things that should still be there, that we could certainly find or replicate. And Sarah and Whitney and Bruce at this point, Roseanne didn't make it to this meeting. They all looked at me and Anne and said, this is a terrible mistake. We need you to make it look as close as you can to the original set. So that's when we went, oh no. But they were very kind and they said the right words. They said, okay, so we know you can't get everything exactly the same. Do as best you can, and our explanation is going to be, when they went to replace that lamp because it was broken, they got something that was as close as they could get that looked like it, but it doesn't have to be exactly the same. But as time went on during the process, it became more and more about, well, how can we make it look more like what was there? So we found carpet. We found, Anne found 2 sofas on Craigslist that we cut one down and turned it into the chair.
Mm-hmm.
We found fabric at a RV manufacturer in Indiana, the Herculon. Brought it in, repainted some of the plaid stripes so we could bring a little bit more of the red into it. The wallpaper in the kitchen, even though they had re-wallpapered it 3 times over the 10 years the show had aired, we had to find something that would look as close to one of those 3 as possible with the little vignettes of kitchen-y things. Well, let me tell you, they do not make that kind of wallpaper anymore at all. So we had to create all the wallpaper so that it would match. And then when it came to the color of the living room, this kind of weird lettuce green that had some yellow in it, but was kind of neutral. We did like 50 tests. We shot it on camera. We put these tests through post. We finally found a color we liked. We painted it. Sarah came in and looked and said, oh, it's just not right. It's just not right. It's too minty. So the producers and everyone there involved was very gracious. And our goal was to get it to where Sarah wanted it and where everybody feel that it was right. So we ended up painting the set 3 times to finally get that color, which I think we pretty much achieved. If you look at an old episode and a new episode, the color, it may not be exact, but it's damn close.
Oh yeah, side by side, looking at pictures, it's pretty close. I think you nailed it.
Yeah, but it wasn't. That was a real kind of a challenge to do, but it was interesting to do. And then once Roseanne left the show, we really haven't done anything to the main sets. But as we've explored a little bit more of the world of Landford and we've gone out a little bit, we've tried to remain true to the working class town of Landford.
Mm-hmm.
But as we follow the script and the writing, if they need to be in a little more upscale restaurant, we're not afraid to do that. We want to support the scene. But
and talk about another show that has some heavy stories.
Yeah.
Mixed in with some comedy, and I don't think there's anyone finer than John Goodman. I've been in love with him forever. I just think he's phenomenal. And I watched the Connors. I love the show.
Yeah, the writing is extremely good, and again, it's good writing, but what an amazing cast.
Yeah.
And the writers have a chance to give those actors material that not everybody could handle, but they manage it so beautifully that you just keep going with them on it. You root for these characters.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. And I'd have to say, I came up, I'm from Philly and South Jersey, and It was so relatable. Not that we were like them as much, like down and out or anything. We weren't like that, but it was such a relatable TV show, and I just think to myself, God, if you had updated that house. I started to think of like neighbors of my parents and everything. Like nobody's updating anything back there. Like, I don't
know. No, and
I didn't.
Home, and even I spend a lot of time. I love going to estate sales here in Los Angeles, and or moving sales and things. And you walk in. It's so many time capsules I've walked into.
Yes.
Where
love it.
That it's a whole life story in these homes that I look at them and think, see, we don't have to rush out and paint everything gray.
No, stop painting everything gray. Stop, please.
I did that when Ashton moved in, at the very beginning of the new wave of gray.
Mm-hmm.
When Ashton moved in on 2.5 Men, I moved in that direction, just as it was starting to.
But that's it. You nailed it. That's the trend. That
was
that's
trend.
Happening. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that character would have had that. So yes. I looked through the packet submission that you have for the ADG, and I just wanted to ask about one set before I let you go because you've been so kind.
Wow.
The yacht set that you did. Or for Big Bang Theory, sorry.
Right.
How fun is that? That's a beautiful thing.
It's the kind of thing when they tell you first go gasp.
Yes.
but on the other hand, I in this one in particular was fun for me because I've had a long held fantasy of somehow buying a pre-owned yacht of some size, maybe just a 40-footer,
Oh, yeah.
But I've spent a lot of time looking at boat magazines and things. And so when they described the yacht and what level it was, I knew just exactly, what I wanted to do in terms of the manufacturer and everything, because we needed enough of a large enough rear deck so we could set out that little patio scene.
Mm-hmm.
So for a boat to have that, it needs to be about at least 70 feet. And so I brought in pictures of yachts, and I brought in pictures, and then we were able to get, once we selected the model, and I wish I could tell you which one it was, but I don't remember. We were able to find some dimensions in measuring to help us, and then we, took our own. Melded together, 3 different, yacht manufacturers' ideas to create that rear deck. And then we just
really captured the architecture of it, though, like the thickness of those walls and the arc of it. It's such a great set. I love it.
Well, Francoise Cherry Cohen, who works with me, she carefully drafted it, and I made, everybody wanted to just make it with square edges, and I said, no, 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 get out your router. We're going to make every edge has got to be curved. This is a
Yes.
fiberglass boat. It's a boat. You fall against it. There are no sharp corners. So, I had written it on the drawing. We'd written it on the drawing about the edging. But when
Mm-hmm.
I went down to the mill and saw it, I said, guys, we're done with this. And I, brought in pictures and said, see, we need to make this look like it's made out of fiberglass and
Oh, it does.
coated.
It totally does.
But
And then the
there's
flooring, is that carpet on two different carpets, or is
Well, it's, they manufacture linoleum that looks like teak hardwood.
yeah? I mean, I thought I would assume it would be teak, but I'm like, it can't be teak. It's like an illusion that it's teak. That's a
Well, I've
fantastic
been to a
find.
lot of boat shows, and they actually manufacture this stuff.
Oh, that's a fantastic find. It looks
And
great.
then, and then of course we did, outdoor area rug like people use nowadays, as I say. And
Mm-hmm.
of course, the interior had a finer wood floor with a suggestion of a carpet installed there too.
Oh yeah, just a fantastic set. And I did not see that episode, but were they on it the whole? They should have been on that whole episode. Should have been done on this yacht.
There
That's
was,
all
I
I'm gonna
think,
say.
there was one extended scene that was cut back and forth to, as I recall. So it wasn't as much as they coulda, woulda, shoulda.
Yeah.
But then we would have had to build more of the boat, and we had to build the whole thing up on a giant rigged platform on top of tires so we could rock it.
Oh my God, that's right. Oh wow. And then save room on the stage for you have a black cyc in this
Yeah,
picture with it,
yeah.
but I'm sure you had to have lighting and grid and.
Well, and it was all done in front of blacks. They use black instead of blue screen or green screen.
Mm.
Which
Oh,
which
fantastic.
actually I've learned is really kind of a nice change, because you don't get those weird green or blue reflections on things.
Yeah, reflections off of like anything chrome or any sort of metal, you get like a reflection off of it.
Right. So on
No.
that show, one more comment is that
Yeah.
the last episode, we got the call that they were going to be getting the Nobel Prize.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, okay, do you guys know what this looks like? So I researched it up and went, this is going to, the Nobel Prize is always done in Sweden in the orchestra hall, and have recently remodeled it. So we actually based ours on the version before the most recent renovation. But the number one thing is it is a tribute to florals.
Yes, I see that. It's beautiful.
Every year, if you research the Nobel Prize, they do these extravagant florals that hang down off of the rails that are in front of the choir, which is above the orchestra level.
Mm-hmm.
And then the orchestra platform in the hall, it's really doesn't have much in the way of entrances. They have sort of garage doors on the side where they push grand pianos in and out, and they have simple little doors. It's just the same way at the Kennedy Center in the orchestra hall, or in Lincoln Center, and I forget what it's called now. It's not the same hall that it used to be.
They just push in the scenery and then it looks.
Yeah, there is no scenery in these places usually, so that's why in Stockholm they just spend a fortune on flowers.
Oh yeah, and then the dinner part of it is it's extraordinary.
Yeah.
Those dinner tables, these big long dinner tables that they have with tons and tons of florals and candles, and it's magnificent. I also researched it for Veep.
Yeah, unfortunately we didn't have to do that. I had been to Stockholm and I had seen the hall, etc., where they do the party, and they have some of the tables, the displays. But that was the challenge to do, and finding the thrones for the royal family to sit on.
Yeah, they're beautiful.
Matched. We had to have them re-gilded and reupholstered, because most of the gilded, high Baroque, Louis XIV.
They don't hold up in prop houses.
They're wore out.
Yeah, no, I know. They're worn out. They've lost their luster.
They've all been used as Santa Claus chairs, and so they all have stains on them. And
yeah, it's all bad Santa. And then I even was thinking, my God, how did she find all of those red chairs for them to sit on?
Right.
So it is, when you have to find multiples in this town, it's not easy anymore.
Oh no! And then every time we have to do a restaurant, which seems like every other week, I go to Anne first and say, "Okay, what chairs do you want to use, and how many can you get before we design?"
Yeah, it's crazy. I don't know. I didn't used to have this problem, and I feel like we're busier than ever, and now we can't get as much stuff. So
yeah, it's chairs. It's the restaurant chairs. They're like, okay, there's this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, and this one. It's like 10 sets in all of Los Angeles
that you can get like 50
40.
of.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it looks like the rental from like a party place.
Right.
Yeah. Then it looks like a rental from a party place.
Which is fine if it's supposed to be a rental from a party place.
But yeah. I cannot thank you enough.
You're welcome.
I hope I get to grab your arm over at the awards next month.
Yeah, please come find me.
Yes. Thank you so much. That was extraordinary. I could go on and on. I have so many questions. Golden Girls, I could do an hour with you. I'm so happy that I got to spend this time with you, because I really appreciate your work, and you have absolutely inspired me to become a decorator with everything, all the shows that I've watched of yours. Obviously, it's a living. So thank you so much
welcome.
For giving me your time.
Kind, and this is always fun. Thank you.
That's great. Thanks.
Okay, another time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Such great stories. I mean, so many. He's got so many good stories. I'm so mad I forgot to tell him that my logo for Decorating Pages is the Friend sofa. And in designing it, I wanted an iconic piece of TV or film furniture. And I thought of sofas in multicam and how the show revolves around it. And it was really down to the Friends sofa or the Roseanne, and I just thought the Friends would be more recognizable. So, damn, I forgot to tell him that. I get a lot of emails asking me, like, where did you get that blanket? Or where did those drapes come from? And although it's been on my website, I don't think I've actually plugged it on here. I have an Amazon page, and I mean all of the purchases that I've made on Amazon for Veep, Versace, The Good Place. I'll have Moxie up there. There's a link on my Decorating Pages podcast website. On the top, it says, as seen on TV. And it takes you right to the Amazon page, and then you could see everything that I bought for the shows, if you're interested. I hope you got an earful. I'm Kim Wanup for Decorating Pages. Decorating Pages is sponsored by Stogie Floaty. Float 'em if you got 'em. On sale now at stogiefloaty.com.